Hi everybody, this is Grandmaster Levan Aroshidze, and after a little timeout, I want to continue making new chess videos for you. Hope you will enjoy them. And today we will talk about Nimzo-Indian Defense from the black side, and I want to show you very interesting weapon, very interesting playing system against Rubinshtein Nge2 variation. So let's go. D4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, e3, castle. By the way, here instead of castle also is possible c7, c5, but personally I prefer to first put the king on the safe place and deal with the center on the later stage. So knight e2, and this is the key moment. Now I want to suggest to your attention strange c7, c6. But of course, first of all, I will explain how we got to this point, why this move, and why I don't like actually in more natural d7, d5. Of course, d7, d5 is absolutely playable. This is still the main line. But for example, now after a3, of course, we have to choose where the bishop should go, to the d6 or to the e7. D6 definitely is the better square. Here bishop is much more active. Just the problem is that after c5, bishop e7, b4, our bishop still will be in a passive position. He lost the best diagonal. And white created very solid pawn chain on the queen side. So this pawn chain definitely will keep under the control our potential on this side of the board, and our minor pieces also will be very limited. Well, anyway, this is not a tragedy for black. Normally in the top player games here, black tries to exchange the pawns, and finally they managed to do that. Also, black tries to exchange his bad light square bishop and safely equalizes after some accurate play. But if we look at the game in view of winning, of course, this is not the best variation and the best position that we could get, because of course this is a bit boring line, and we can't really count on the winning chances here. Another move could be bishop e7 here, but okay, we immediately put the bishop on the passive diagonal, and this is also doesn't make me very happy. For instance, white can take on d5. This is also a very popular variation. G3, and later white tries to play in the center using his pawn majority here, f3 and e4. At the same time, he could also push g4, knight g3, and combine his central strategy also to the kingside attack. Okay, this line is also playable, but right now I really like c6, so let's go a bit deeper with this line and details. Obviously white needs to play a3 here and push the bishop to a5, because if he doesn't do that, of course now we'll put d5, and on the later stage whenever he plays a3, bishop d6, c5, bishop already has very important c7 square and will stay on the fantastic diagonal. So obviously a3 is the best move here, bishop a4. And now white has two possibilities mainly. He can go for the super aggressive b4 and pushing the pawns, or just finishing development. Okay, first of all, let's check this aggressive line and even e4. But to be honest, with the king on e1 and pieces so badly developed, I don't really believe in this position from the white side. d5. Of course, we also have to say our word for the fighting in the center. And after e5, knight should go to e8. Why to e8? For instance, after knight e8, white can also take on d5, pawn takes, and now both of our knights are flexible, and we will get to the very good positions. this knight b8 goes to the c4, and this knight will appear to the g7, helping black to keep the blocking structure on the light squares. Okay, for example, g3, knight e7, f4, knight b6, bishop g2, knight c4, c4 castle g6, h3, knight g7, following by h5 and bishop f5, and I would even say that black has slightly better position. Another justification why knight to e8 is that, for instance, after knight e7, pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5, f4, we even cannot start immediate fight against the center, as bishop is closed and could be followed e6 and f5. So I guess we already know why knight should go to e8, and c5 is left. White still tries to keep very solid pawn chain, very strong pawn chain. Also, probably he will support it with the f4 move, and white hopes that this pawn chain will keep our minor pieces in a very passive positions. f6, f4, and a5. Now, white has to choose. Or he will play rook b1 and give up a file, or he will play bishop a3, and at some point when pawns will be exchanged and rooks also will be exchanged, queen will appear to the very passive position in the corner. Of course, this is not a tragedy, but this is connected with a lot of the time, because then white should bring this queen back to the game. Okay, for instance, g5, very good and typical strike for these positions. I remember something similar could appear also in the Caro-Kann, one of the bishop e3 closed lines, and there also g5 was very thematic advance to destroy the pawn chain. Still, g3 will keep it alive, but now after exchange, rook takes a1, queen takes a1, we have knight g7, very good square. Obviously this knight gets to the f5 soon, winning more tempos, so black is just fine. If white plays normally, bishop g2, exchange, knight jumps to the queen side, attacking b4 pawn. Now queen checks, gives check from h4, knight f5, and surprisingly, black has probably already winning attack. Okay, and if we will go back to the rook b1 continuation, then we take here, and this is also something real, something serious, that we have active rook here, taking on e5 and knight d7. Okay, even after that, it seems that, and what now? Because I don't see where the knight is going, where another knight is going, what is the future of these bishops. So white could play something like g3 and calmly continue finishing development, and then at some stage try to make some castle or bring the king to the safe position. The key strike, the key idea for black is that we have beautiful resource, knight takes e5, and our central pawns and bad position of the king perfectly compensate lack of the piece. I would say even more than just compensates. Black clearly has better position. Now just I'm going back and starting to push the pawns. Okay, so I guess aggressive before line maybe is not that good for white. And now what's left is knight g3 of the first look. So knight g3, now obviously d5. Queen c2 is the main move. Of course, we wait when the bishop will go out and will take on c4 only after that. If bishop d3 immediately, now of course we take it here, and as always in such a pawn structures, for example, it really looks like a Slav, black has to choose d5 or c5 breakthrough. Right now I would play c5, and in case of pawn takes, white gets a terrible endgame. Obviously we are planning rook c8, recovering the pawn, and then we're gonna use bad pawn chain. And if he ignores c5 just castling, now we have perfect position against isolated d4 pawn. One of the main problems for white is a misplaced knight on g3, because normally this knight should be on f3, closer to the center and protecting pawn d4. So, okay, queen c2 is possible, of course, avoiding queen exchange ideas and waiting a little bit, but we also can make many useful moves, and these will be followed only after bishop d3 or bishop e2. So bishop d3, take, and again, or c5 or e5. This time, as knight is on d7, probably should be played e5, as in case of exchange, knight perfectly enters to the e5 square. So castle, again we get these isolated pawn structures, and bishop c7. There are enough games for such a pawn structure exactly for this position. I also played twice, if I'm not mistaken, this was black, and it's more or less equal position. Rook e1, knight b6, bishop a2. I tried knight fd5, but probably the best and most solid way to equalize here is surprising bishop e6. Bishop takes e6, pawn takes e6, and d4 and the e6 pawns are compensating weakness of each other. So it's just equal play. Bishop e3, protecting d4 pawn. Now knight d5. Probably this time bishop already should go. Queen d6, and black plans rook e8, and then something like knight g4, knight f4, maybe h6. It's equal position. And one last thing for this line. I also played it twice in a rapid games, and after bishop a5, some of my opponent decided to go for g3. We almost forgot about this opportunity, but okay, white can go for the fianchetto lines, and after d5, for example, it looks like that take, bishop d2, g2 castle, and as always f3, e4 plan. So in this case, our bishop on a5 looks like a little bit misplaced, and we could say that it would be even better to have this bishop on e7 than in the corner, right? So yeah, this looks quite logical. But the trick is that now, after d5 and pawn takes d5, we can take with the queen. It's funny that in the first rapid game, when some international master, if I'm not mistaken, played this against me, I didn't know about this trick, queen d5, and I took with the pawn. Anyway, I won that game, but then at home I saw this opportunity, and okay, I made some analysis. The point is that now white should play just rook g1, and again he gets some problem with the king. Queen h5, and for example, if he now plays with h3, we're gonna strike in the center. In case of g4, just queen h4, preparing knight f4. Black has very unpleasant initiative. Last year, another international master played this against me, and now he continued bishop g2. Of course, we shouldn't take on h2, because after king h1, king f1, sorry, rook h1 is the threat, and white takes the initiative. We should just continue opening the position and using the bet white king. So pawn takes, queen takes, and queen d4. White would be happy to exchange the queens here with such a bad king. We already mentioned that, so obviously we have to go queen e7. Bishop d2, knight d2, knight d7, sorry. And the problem is that now we want to play knight c5, looking for such a beautiful squares, and also planning rook d8, and somehow white queen is also in trouble. So obviously now my opponent played queen a4, so his idea was to win the tempo by attacking the bishop, and also prepare nice square for the queen on c2, hoping also to have time for the castle. And it looks okay, more or less playable for white. And now after queen a4, all my intuition was telling me that there's something here. There should be some tactic. The situation is ready for that. We have to continue the power play with the tempos, with the threats, instead of going back with the bishop. I spent about 7 minutes, but unfortunately I didn't find it. So now just, it would be nice, try to put on the pause your video and find the winning continuation now with black. If you already did it, I'm gonna show you which is that move. It's a knight c5. Because bishop cannot be taken, as black will play b6, queen has only one move and will be lost after double with the knight d3. And white's position quickly becomes critical. Okay, queen c2 can be played, but after rook d8 there is no comfortable way to avoid the entrance here, and white is in trouble. So, okay, well, this trick is also interesting to know. And just last additional thing is that if he will play b4 here instead of taking on d5, this move doesn't fit very well with the white's plan, because he weakens c4 square too early, and white normally tries here to attack in the center on the king side, not with the pawn majority. So we will happily bring our knight to the c4 and we'll have really very comfortable position. So I hope you enjoyed this very interesting c6 variation, and I hope you will successfully use this idea in your games. See you next time. Bye bye.